Welcome into Run the League. I'm Grayson Grunhafer, and this is the Stardom Situm episode of Run the League. Let's get some wins this week. Here we go. All right, guys, welcome into Stardom Situm. Let's start with the quarterback position. Let's go out. Let's win this week. Get some fantasy football momentum. Lord knows I definitely need it, so I'm sure some of y'all do as well. And if not, well, congratulations on having an awesome season up to this point, but it's not over. You got to keep working and you got to keep going if you actually want to win your championship this year. So, quarterbacks, my starts of the week, or starts this week, I like Taylor Heinicke versus the Kansas City Chiefs. Again, I think that's going to be a shootout. And I have to mention this every week. You're going to start the top 10, top 12 guys, of course. But if you have kind of a guy that you're unsure about and you need some options, Taylor Heinicke, I think, could be a top 10 play this week against the Kansas City Chiefs. The other guy that I like as a start, Matthew Stafford. He's usually a start, but I know he's more of a fringe guy just because he doesn't bring the running upside that a lot of quarterbacks do. But he takes on the Giants this week, and I think he's going to have a big week. I think Robert Woods, Cooper Kupp are going to really have a nice week with Matthew Stafford, Tyler Higbee maybe as well. But my start of the week at the quarterback position is Justin Herbert. The Chargers quarterback has been an absolute rock star over the past couple weeks. He takes on the Baltimore Ravens. I expect this game to be a shootout. I think he and Lamar Jackson are going to go back and forth the entire game. I think that's going to be a lot of fun to watch. So Justin Herbert, yeah, definitely start him. I think he's going to have a huge week for the Chargers this upcoming week, especially after watching what Carson Wentz did to the Baltimore Ravens. I just think Herbert's going to have tons of opportunities against them. My sits of the week, Ryan Tannehill versus the Buffalo Bills. You know, even in garbage time, Ryan Tannehill has really struggled this year. And yeah, they're running the ball a ton with Derrick Henry, and maybe if they're in a really negative game script like they're going to be against the Bills, maybe he'll play well, but I'm just not so confident in that. We saw Patrick Mahomes have a really tough time against the Bills' defense, even though they were trailing the whole time. So I don't know why that would change for Tannehill, especially if he continues to miss Julio Jones, if A.J. Brown is still not 100%. I'm just really cautious here and definitely trying to not start Tannehill if I can avoid it. The other guy that I'm not starting this week, this is going to be a tough one for people to not start, and I know this, but the Chicago Bears defense is really, really good this year, and they're really keeping them in games, and the Bears seem to want to run the football and just kind of dominate time of possession, and I think they might be able to do that against the Packers this week, and therefore Aaron Rodgers is a guy I don't want to start this week. Last week he finished 14th, even though he was really, really good, and Devontae Adams was amazing, and the game went to overtime, and he still finished 14th on the season. That's not what you're looking for out of your quarterback when that is kind of the upside they bring even in an overtime game. And I think against the Bears, that's a better defense than what they faced against the Bengals. So, yeah, I would not want to play Aaron Rodgers this week. A top guy that I'm worried about. So I've been adding this kind of to my start and sits of the week, but it's a top guy that I have concerns about. And I'm not saying you don't start them, but what I am saying is temper expectations a little bit. And if you have two of the top, 15, top 10 quarterbacks, maybe look to pivot here and try to find a way to get him out of your lineup. This week, and this is a guy who I loved coming into the year, and he's putting up tons of fantasy points, but I do think he's due to have a bad week at some point, and that's Jalen Hurts. And my reasoning for this is if you watch the first half of football games the Eagles have been in, Jalen Hurts has been awful. But then the second half, he plays really well. Now, some of that is they're trailing, so he has to throw the football, has to make plays. Some of it is, the game plan didn't work out in the first half and adjustments at halftime. But I'm just worried that at some point, they're not going to be able to make those adjustments in the second half, and he's just going to come out and give you a dud. There's upside here against Tampa Bay. They have a really bad secondary. But I'm just a little concerned that he could come into the second half with 4 points or, heck, negative points, which is what he had coming into the second half this week and somehow still ended up with 20. I'm just concerned that maybe he enters the second half with a bad point total and then just kind of busts this week. So temper expectations a little bit on Hurts and be a little cautious when you're playing him this week. Running backs, my starts this week, the Broncos combination of Javonte Williams and Melvin Gordon. I would start both of them as an RB2 or flex this week. Love the matchup that they have. They're taking on the Raiders. Again, I think the Raiders are kind of in this mode where they're probably not going to be playing very well. They just lost their head coach. I have a feeling that this is going to be a bad week for the Raiders, and therefore I think this is going to be a pretty good week for the Denver Broncos, especially in the run game. I also really like Darrell Henderson this week versus the New York Giants. I think the Rams offense is going to move the ball really well, and if Darrell Henderson can fall into the end zone twice, you're going to have a heck of a week. So he's an interesting option. Again, I mentioned him as a guy to target. Later on this year, he's got a great finish to the season with his schedule, and so I think he could have a big role and possibly be a league winner later in the year. But I also like his duo guy, which is Sony Michel. Sony Michel scored a touchdown last week. I think he's going to continue to get some carries in this offense. So in deeper leagues, I actually like playing him this week. Not in normal 10-team leagues or 12-team leagues, but if you got a 14-team league or a dynasty league where you roster a lot of players, Sony's an interesting option this week, as I do think they'll be able to run the football pretty consistently. I also really like Jonathan Taylor this week against the Houston Texans. He was awesome against the Baltimore Ravens on Monday Night Football. And I think against Houston, they're going to want to run the ball a ton. And so therefore, I think Jonathan Taylor has a big week against the Texans. My start of the week this week is James Robinson, the Jacksonville Jaguars running back. They are finally using him the way they should have been using him at the beginning of the year. And they get the awesome matchup against the Miami Dolphins, who are just hemorrhaging rushing yards against opponents. James Robinson, big week for the Jaguars, in my opinion. And I think he's definitely a guy who you're going to be very happy if you have on your roster. And if you started, he's just continuing to get better and better each week. It's pretty amazing to see kind of what he's done from being an undrafted rookie last year and having that awesome year to where he is now, where he had to fight with, the Travis Etienne pickup, and he just continues to play really well and produce for fantasy. My sits of the week, Miles Sanders versus Tampa Bay. So Miles Sanders has no top 34 finishes since week 1. This guy is absolutely irrelevant right now in fantasy football, and it's so sad to say because he's very talented, but the Eagles just seem content with throwing the football and allowing Jalen Hurts to be the guy in their offense, the dude that the offense is centered around, and it's not Miles Sanders. And so I can't play him this week. He's taking on the Tampa Bay Buccaneers, who have been absolutely amazing against running backs this year. So very concerned for Miles Sanders. Find a way to not play him this week. Just in my opinion, I have to see it from Miles Sanders before I can play him again. There are other guys in similar situations, such as Brandon Ayuk at the wide receiver position, Allen Robinson, where you just need to sit back, put them on your bench, and just see it before you can start playing those guys again. Another sit this week is Nyheim Hines. It's just very weird for the Colts right now. When they're up in games, he just does not have a huge role. And I think they're going to be up against the Houston Texans. So don't play Nyheim Hines this week. I think you're going to be very disappointed. The top guy I'm worried about at the running back position is Aaron Jones. And it's the similar reason why I'm a little worried about Aaron Rodgers this week is the Chicago defense is for real. I think that's going to be a low-scoring game. I think the Packers are going to struggle to move the ball. It's a rivalry game. So a little concerned about Aaron Jones, who was awesome for fantasy. He's been amazing for fantasy the last 3 years, but against the Bears, for some reason, he has really struggled against the Bears for the past few years. So I would not play I would not be confident in playing him. You have to play him. He's your first-round pick, but temper expectations. See if you can put in, maybe some high-ceiling guys into your lineup this week and just hope for them to have a massive week to make up for maybe Aaron Jones just having a mediocre week this week. At the wide receiver position, my starts this week, love Mike Williams versus the Baltimore Ravens. Again, I've mentioned I think the Chargers are going to be amazing on offense going forward this year, and I think especially in this matchup against the Ravens. And Mike Williams right now is the wide receiver 1 on the season. This guy's been absolutely tearing it up. He had 16 targets last week. I mean, he's a target machine, and he is a big play waiting to happen. I think he's going to be very tough for Baltimore to stop this week. I also really like the Steelers wide receivers. I mentioned Big Ben a little bit earlier. Juju Smith-Schuster is out for the season. So now you have to reevaluate the Steelers wide receiving options. I was not happy with playing any of them. Deontay was the only one where you go, okay, you know he's getting targets. You can play him weekly. But the upside wasn't really there for him. Now I think there is upside there for he and Chase Claypool. I think you can play both this week and see what happens. See how the target share goes, see who Big Ben is targeting between the two, and just see what you have for the rest of the season. But I think you should be pretty confident now with Juju out that these guys are going to get a lot more targets, and against a really bad Seattle Seahawks defense, they could put up some huge points. I also really like Emmanuel Sanders this week against Tennessee Titans. The Bills are playing great offense right now, and Emmanuel Sanders has been a big part of that. He's really taking away from Stephon Diggs' value this season, and he looks great. I mean, he just looks rejuvenated. Josh Allen has really helped with that, but he's been a big play waiting to happen, so I think he's going to have another one against the Titans this week. My start of the week, though, at the wide receiver position is the Houston Texans wide receiver, Brandon Cooks. He takes on the Indianapolis Colts this week. I think the Texans are going to be chasing points. They're going to throw the ball a ton, and after watching the Colts secondary on Monday, where they're literally missing their starting cornerbacks and their backup cornerbacks. They were playing 2 third-stringers who were on the practice squad earlier in the week. I mean, what in the world? There's no way those guys are going to guard elite NFL wide receivers, and that's what Brandon Cooks is. I think Brandon Cooks has a massive day against the Colts secondary. My sits this week, this might be a permanent sit. This might be a drop for me, but that's Robbie Anderson, the Carolina Panthers wide receiver. I just don't understand what the Panthers are doing, but Matt Rule, they decide to pay Robbie Anderson, right? And now they're completely not using him, and they're using DJ Moore like they used him last year. It just is a really weird situation going on in Carolina. He had his opportunity these last 2 weeks to really prove something with Christian McCaffrey out, because we saw how good Robbie Anderson was last year when CMC missed time. But now CMC's probably going to be back this week, and I think Robbie Anderson is a guy you can drop. He has no top 43 finishes this year. Top 43 at the wide receiver position. Robbie Anderson hasn't finished inside that once. So, yeah, Robbie Anderson might be a drop for me this week. Probably is a drop, to be honest. I would definitely take Kadarius Toney over him, Rondale Moore over him. Some of the other guys on the waiver wire, Tim Patrick right now, while Judy's out. Yeah, I would take all those guys over Robbie Anderson at the moment. Odell Beckham Jr., the Browns wide receiver, they take on the Cardinals this week. Baker just does not like throwing the ball to Odell Beckham. Jarvis Landry will be back probably in the next couple weeks, and that's going to be his main target. But I just don't know what's going on with Odell in Cleveland. It just has not worked. It has not worked out at all. And Baker's not even really targeting him. So I'm staying away from OBJ until I'm proven wrong, or until I see something that really shows me, okay, there's a connection there, or something's starting to change in the offense. But they're going to run the football, and then they're going to throw the ball to the open man. And more times than not, that has not been Odell Beckham Jr. Also, the Minnesota Vikings wide receiver, Adam Thielen. I'm going to try not to start him this week versus the Panthers. Panthers secondary has been pretty good. They looked really good against Jalen Hurts for the large part of that game. So I think Thielen could struggle this week. A top guy I'm worried about is Tyler Lockett versus the Pittsburgh Steelers this week. He's got Geno Smith at quarterback, and Geno looked to DK Metcalf a whole lot more than Russell Wilson was looking at DK Metcalf. So my thought process is that DK will be the wide receiver 1 for sure for Seattle now, and Lockett will be kind of a flex option at best. We're going to have to see Geno take some shots deep. That's really where Russell and Tyler Lockett have that connection with the deep ball down the middle of the field, and you saw it last week before Russell Wilson went out. I mean, they were honestly a holding call away from Tyler Lockett having a touchdown. They were a pass interference call away from him having a 50-yard touchdown. There's a lot to think about when you're evaluating the Seahawks right now with Geno Smith out. At the tight end position, my starts this week, Dawson Knox. He's been awesome. He has absolutely been fantastic for the Buffalo Bills this season. And they take on the Tennessee Titans. And I expect the big plays to continue for Dawson Knox. I expect him to be a top 10 tight end once again this week. I've been really impressed with him. He had a couple really big plays, and most times you don't see tight ends having those 50-yard catches. And when they do, there's clearly some flashes of talent there, and Dawson Knox has that. Hunter Henry versus the Dallas Cowboys is another really interesting option this week. He got a lot of targets last week, played over 70% of the snaps. I think the Patriots are going to continue to feature him, and so Hunter Henry's a pretty nice start this week. My start of the week, though, is TJ Hawkinson, the Detroit Lions tight end. He's had a rough couple weeks, and I think it's been partly due to injury and partly due to the fact that he's gotten double covered a ton. And that's really unfortunate because the Lions need TJ Hawkinson to be productive. I think against the Bengals this week, he gets it back together. I think Hawkinson really thrives for your fantasy roster this week. My sit of the week at the tight end position is Dalton Schultz, the Cowboys tight end. He has been awesome, but I think he finally comes back down to the average and has a mediocre week, which is still probably going to be, a 4 for 30, 4 for 50 type week, which is serviceable, but I'm not expecting him to have the big week against the Patriots this upcoming week. So that's it for Stardom Situm this week. Of course, this is Run the League on 365 on NFL Sports, but I will also say this. Check out our fantasy football show. It comes out tomorrow morning. Be sure to check that out. Of course, waiver wire runs every Tuesday, and then this episode every Wednesday. We have tons of fantasy football content, tons of Cowboys, Texans, all sorts of NFL content on NFL on 365 Sports. But this has been Run the League with Grayson Grunhafer.